Today, the final battle against the Changelings continues. We're having success against their ships. They keep foolishly sending ships out to get sunk. They're doing better than they were last episode, but they're still losing. They're still losing a lot of ships unnecessarily. We're winning the war between the continents on the continent of Changelingia, I guess I can probably now call it. We have a small beachhead, but pushing is hard. Well, I've done everything I can to squeeze every bit of supply I can get up here, and I have room to bring over some more stuff, so I'm going to bring over at least one tank unit, a whole bunch of my medium tanks, because this could make the difference, possibly. As long as I can support all the supply they will take. Yeah, I'm going to have to probably make some modern tank divisions. I don't have enough experience to make the modern tanks that I would like, because I'm kind of actually short on army XP. I might grind some units a little bit just to get some. These medium tanks definitely aren't good enough anymore. I'm kind of getting a breakthrough up here in the north, so let's see, maybe we can liberate some more of Nova Griffonia up here. Okay, so they obviously have a giant army up here, but I'm sure that these units, as you look at them, you can kind of tell that there aren't actually that many units here. It's kind of hard to push, just because they have so many really strong tank divisions, and my modern tanks divisions aren't quite out yet. But I think it's about time that I do another naval invasion down in the south. My naval invasion stuff isn't quite ready yet, like my amphibious tanks. It's that the amphibious tanks aren't too necessary though, so I'm gonna at least try to do a naval invasion down here just to get something going. Okay, I finally encircled this city after forever, and I'm convoy raiding them pretty badly. They don't have a navy to protect anything, so their port is only somewhat useful. It'll be nice once we can finally retrieve it for ourselves. But then, now we have a pretty scary naval invasion to do down here. If it's successful, it could end the war. Probably, honestly, end the war, because we could, you know, start pushing from the south, too. Otherwise, we're just gonna lose a ton of divisions. But we really have no choice at this point. And we got the port! Okay, this changes everything now. That's an amazing thing to see. And we have a nuke, too. Oh, looks like they evacuated all their units from there. That's good. Yeah, well, we don't encircle as many units, but in my opinion, that's good. Naval base level 2. That's not very good. Well, the invasion in the south seems to have done the trick. I think we can start a push. After all this work, I've spent hours and hours trying to make anything happen, and I think that this push could finally be successful. There we go. Well, it's time to use our most powerful weapon, the nuclear bomb. We're kind of encountering some resistance down here in kind of the southern part of the northern front, but we have plenty of nukes and air superiority with bombers, so, well, not here, but we'll start off with just a nice little push down there. Yep, and I have officially passed the Changelings in casualties caused. That's good. They're actually attacking me now, which is convenient because it's just gonna wear down their manpower. They've finally gone on to scraping the barrels, so they're going to be done once their manpower runs out. We still have 3 million before we have to go to all adults serve, which will double our manpower to probably 10 million again. So we don't have to worry, and if the changelings are doing this, I love to see the changelings attacking us in this situation. It's the best possible outcome. Because they're not ever going to break us, but they're just going to lose their manpower like crazy. Like they're losing 10,000 soldiers every second about on 5 speed. And that's crazy. Grover was walking down the hallway in the palace. Headed to a lesson about law while carrying a stack of thick books, he passed Eros' office and noticed that the door was open. Out of curiosity, he peeked inside. There, the old griffin was sitting at his desk like always, hard at work with his papers. Grover smiled and admired how diligent he still was, despite being a frail bird who was over 100 years old at this point. He turned to leave, worried that he'd be late from class. A loud thump came from the office, a chill went down Grover's spine, and he stopped for a moment before dropping his book on the floor and rushed inside. Eros had fallen on the floor from his chair. He seemed unconscious. Without hesitation, he immediately called for aid and went to review the poor old griffin. His heart was still beating, but his claws were cold and he did not wake up, despite Grover's best attempts. The courtly doctors examined Eros and concluded that he had suffered from a mild stroke and fallen into a coma. They were unsure if he would wake up and predicted he'd most likely die within days. The imperial court soon erupted into chaos, with no one being entirely sure who was in charge now, and the other 2 archons did their best to restore order. Grover did not let grief and worry overcome him and boldly stepped forth, saying he would rule in Eros' stead before he'd wake up. Despite him being underage, the archons agreed to let him help them at the very least. While the expectations were low, Grover impressed everyone, and he confidently began to fulfill Eros' duties, such as performing religious rituals, filling paperwork, issuing commands to the chief of staff, holding speeches, drafting legislation, and meeting foreign dignitaries. He was shy and avoided confrontation. His vast knowledge made up for it. A week later, a miracle occurred and Eros woke up from his coma. He almost jumped out of bed, fearing that the empire had collapsed in his absence, only to discover that Grover had made him proud. Now he knew for sure that the emperor was ready to rule. Okay, so Archon Eros probably won't be our leader for long. And the war at this point is pretty much won, because the changelings have officially hit 0 manpower. It's impressive. It's a good moment. This is pretty much the end for them. Scraping the barrel, 0 manpower. They still have a decent amount of fielded manpower, but at this point, it doesn't matter too much. I think I'm going to try to push again up here. Yeah, the changelings are doing surprisingly bad now, even worse than I thought. They now have twice the amount of losses as us, and they barely have 1.5 million men in the field too. I can't believe they're even holding on this well right now. I guess we are pretty much just rolling over them at this point. You can see their borders aren't even really fully garrisoned, and all their divisions they currently have pretty much have no manpower. Silipolis has fallen, which they really don't even have any units to defend anything at this point. They have 500,000 fielded manpower. We have 7.5 million fielded manpower. It's pretty much just how fast can my units move at this point. Wow, we magically just signed a white peace with the polar bears, and now they're fighting the changelings. I don't know what happened there. Well, now that was a war. That's a lot of war score. That shows you about how much work it was making this happen. And it's gonna take quite a while to load all these states. Well, before we finish up this very long and very fun playthrough, the channel's really close to or at 200 subscribers, and I'm really thankful for everybody who has subscribed. And for those who haven't, it really means a lot to me if you do. Oh, and before our final battle, the coronation. Today marks a wonderful day in the reconstituted Griffonian Empire. Yes, very reconstituted. This morning, rising with the dawning sun, Grover, sixth of his line, was crowned emperor. Upon coming of age, the young chick is no longer that, but a proud member and glorious leader of the Grand Emperor. The ceremony itself was a beautiful affair, with the Arcanate choir providing all the soundtrack necessary. Arcaneros, the now former regent, gave a short speech calling forth visions of a wonderful and glorious future for the empire. The crown was rested upon its rightful owner's head, and the crowd present cheered for their new emperor. Then all were asked for silence as Grover gave his speech. Friends, brothers, and sisters, we have finally returned our holy Griffonian empire from the darkness of this generation. And even still, our foes stand against us. Not really, ready to strike, but this matters not. With the gods on our side, none can stand against us. From this day forward, we will march confidently towards our destiny, not one step back. Long live the Emperor, long live the Empire. And there we go, Emperor Grover the Sixth. He will lead us into our final battle. How fitting. The March of the Students. The Emperor recently came of age and is ready to rule his reunited empire. But it is clear he must immediately get to work. Young students of a new generation, more well-educated and conscious than their parents, are calling for peace and freedom across the empire. Throughout their lives, they have known nothing but war. Yeah, that's true. With mass conscription and strict military production quotas, they are now tired of it and dream for a peace that is maintained in a society that is demilitarized. While the old guard considers them Republican sympathizers, the truth is that most of them see the benefits of imperial rule and simply want reform, and they want it now. Today, thousands of Griffins, if not tens of thousands of them, gathered in Griffinheim from all across the empire. Most of them were students, but there were government personnel among them. They began something that had not been seen in the imperial capital since 978, a mass protest. However, it was not a riot, but a peaceful demonstration, with protesters calmly holding signs with slogans and calling for liberty, regional autonomy, and reform of the state and the temples. Yet some among them were more radical and tried to sway others to their side with fiery speeches. Several clashes with local police could not be avoided, but in general it was entirely peaceful. News has spread like wildfire, and smaller protests have already sprung up in support of the Griffinheim one in many imperial cities, in Skyfall, Aquila, Carthan, Cloudbury, and others. It is clear that His Majesty Grover VI cannot ignore this movement. Above all, the students demand an end to the dictatorship which was maintained under the rule of the imperial regent. If Grover VI simply continues to act like a despot of old, it is not out of question that horrors of 978 are repeated. So times are changing. I say, our empire is strong. We don't need a completely authoritarian rule. We don't need all these high conscription laws. We don't need war economy. Let's go back to the good old civilian economy. We don't need all this limited exports. How about free trade? There's no one to really trade with, but we can go into free trade. We'll go off of all adults serve in a second. Yeah, let's finish up this short war, and then we can completely demilitarize our country. And the last war won. Oh yes, and the reforms of Grover VI. Today marked the beginning of a new age for the Empire. His Majesty Grover VI passed his initial reforms, which primarily focused on establishing the foundation for further change. Most notably, he demised the advisors who had previously opposed his conciliatory stance with the protesters, and greatly reduced the power of the three archonists to the point where there was very little they could do to influence governance and legislation. Okay, so some other small reforms and stuff. Okay, so we are now a non-aligned. Fascism rules no more. We're we're going in the right direction, I guess. And checks and balances. Wow, even more stuff. I don't even know if you can call this an empire at this point. And at last, an election. The first election in the Griffonian Empire. We have two parties. The Kaiser Party led by Eckhard Weisner, and the liberal Volksfront Party led by Edwin von Kleef. And I think it's only fair that after everything the Archon and the Emperor have done, that we let the Emperor's party, well, I guess both of them would still be led by Grover VI, but I guess we can have the Kaiser Party just as a homage to where we came from. Oh, and the death of a Titan. Soon after Grover's coronation, it seemed like Eros' old age finally caught up with him. When before he had been diligent and determined, now he withered before everyone's eyes as if he lost the blessing of Boreas which had kept him alive so long. For a time, he acted as Grover's closest advisor before he eventually suffered another stroke. It was clear to everyone he did not have much longer to live. One day, His Majesty decided to pay a visit to his dear mentor and former regent. When Eros, lying in bed, saw another enter, he asked, "Grover, why are you here? You have more important things to do than visit me, I'm sure." Grover chuckled and sat beside his bed. "My schedule's actually free, Mr. Eros. I wanted to see how you're doing and maybe chat for a while, if you insist," the old Griff said and sighed. The two walked for a while with Grover, telling of his reign, and Eros nodded in approval. "You'll be remembered fondly by the future generations, I'm sure," he said, "unlike me." Grover raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? You're a conqueror who rivals Grover the First. It was you who saved the Empire from certain doom and did everything you could to restore its greatness. I was a zealous tyrant who destroyed nations and reunited Griffonia with iron and blood. I fear judgment Boreas will pass on me, but remember this, Your Majesty. All of the terrible things I did so you wouldn't have to." It dawned on Grover how Eros had sacrificed everything for the Empire, and for him. He never had a wife, he never had much wealth, and he had given his vast power to him. Now the mightiest griffin on Griffonia was but a sickly shadow of his former self. Eros, if I may be honest, it would pain me if history were to remember you as a terrible person. I know the truth about who you are. You're not a tyrant. You're the father I never had. I may not influence the gods, but at the very least, I can change the minds of the people. They should look up to you, not hate you. Eros smiled wearily, and with the little strength he had, grasped Grover's claw. "I appreciate it, but really, don't waste your time on me. I never cared much for earthly reputation. Simply seeing you grow up was all I ever needed in life. Now my duty is fulfilled. I want nothing else." Grover smiled as well. "Fine. How about I just commission a statue of you? I'm sure you'll love it." Eros let out a chuckle. "If you insist." Then Grover embraced him, which caught him by surprise, but he weakly hugged back nevertheless. "I'll come visit again, as soon as I am able," Grover promised. But when he came on the following day, the bed was empty. The Archon had joined his father in the heavenly mountains, among the fountains of gold. And thank you guys for joining me on this playthrough of the Griffonian Empire. We've restored democracy and conquered the world at the same time. It's been fun. It was an exciting journey. And I'll see you guys next time for the Crystal Empire playthrough. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe. Remember to give this video a like. I would really appreciate that. and see you guys then.